Good morning, everybody. My name is Andy Davis, and I'm the director of the London University's Purchasing Consortium, and I'm here to talk to you this morning about public procurement and human rights. Just first of all, a quick word about London University's Purchasing Consortium. We are a small organisation, small not-for-profit professional buying organisation, one of 6 in the United Kingdom, although we all collaborate with one another, much like the purchasing consortia in local government do as well. Owned by our members for our members, and we put in place collaborative framework agreements for all sorts of goods and services, the kind of thing that you might imagine. We have 74 full members in London at the moment, although actually fewer than half of those are higher education institutions. Many of them are drawn from our neighbouring arts, sciences, health, cultural sectors, but all of them are not-for-profit, and we all share similar values, as I hope you will see. We spend about £208 million a year through our framework agreements, which is relatively small, in fact, for a purchasing consortium in public service, and we ourselves turn over just over £1 million, and we're up to 11 employees. We were formed in 1968, which I think makes us about the slowest business growth rate in the history of business. Anyway, like I say, we like to feel that we share the values of our members, which means that certainly those of us in higher education, we all want to help support the delivery of quality higher education without causing harm to others. And it's actually not too hard to convince our members and for them to convince others, in fact, that responsible procurement is good for business. And I think that's true of all of public service. I certainly like to think so. Now, to begin with, I would like to start with a visualization exercise, if you will. So I'd like you to imagine, please, that you are a travel buyer staying in a hotel in Britain on a business trip, and you speak with a hotel worker, and that hotel worker looks as if she might be a little reluctant to speak to you, especially within earshot of her supervisor. She looks unkempt and is perhaps thin. Moreover, she tells you she's from Vietnam and she would like to go home, but that her employer is withholding her passport. Now, the question is, what would you do first in an instance like this? This is multiple choice, all right? You'll be pleased to know. So firstly, and I'm going to read this out, request a meeting with the account manager for the hotel chain. Remember, you're the travel buyer. Ask them to share details about their recruitment practices. Okay? Next option, inform the police. Next option, ensure that the hotel chain is included in a project inviting suppliers to conduct a supply chain risk assessment and produce an action plan. Now, anybody like to hazard a guess as to what they think they should do first out of those 3 options?
I would say B, please.
B would be an excellent choice in this instance. In fact, it's safe to say that if you believe anybody is in immediate danger, you should call 999 straight away. The police will know what to do. Okay. If in fact you have suspicions that somebody might be being trafficked, or in a situation where they are working under duress or with limitations on their personal freedoms, you can also dial 101 or visit your local police station and report that. But immediate danger, please dial 999, okay? What I want you to spend a little bit of time now is thinking about what the signs of human trafficking are. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, if I may. So these are the signs to look for, and it's worthwhile sharing this with your colleagues in the organisation you work in. Okay. Firstly, that they show signs of physical or psychological abuse, they look unkempt or appear withdrawn, perhaps neglected, seem under the control of others, appear unfamiliar with their surroundings or where they work. They might live in dirty, cramped or overcrowded accommodation, or might be living and working at the same address perhaps. They might have few personal possessions, always wear the same clothes day in, day out. They might have little opportunity to move freely. They might have their passport retained by their employer. This is another one, a particular one, being dropped off and collected for work on a regular basis in a group perhaps, either very early in the morning or late at night. They might avoid eye contact, appear frightened, hesitant to talk to strangers, and particularly with law enforcers. They might be very wary for lots of reasons. Because they don't know who to trust, they might have fear of deportation, fear of violence to them or their families, so they're very, very nervous about coming across law enforcement. Okay? These signs are very important, and it's the looking for these signs is important. What I want you to do also is to have a look at this website. This is a charity that we work with called Unseen UK, and indeed they also run the National Modern Slavery Helpline. Again, this is an instance where Unseen UK as a charity is an organisation which can help people in danger, give them shelter, give them support, and so on. Okay, very, very important. Now, I want to go on to talk a little bit more about the global context of this, and to some figures for you. Many of these figures are estimates produced by the International Labour Organization, and towards the end there are some which are closer to home. Okay, so first of all, this is an estimate that 21 million people are victims of forced labour in the world today. That's about the population of Argentina. Okay? It's also double the total number of direct victims of African slavery in that period from 1650 to 1900. So this is an immense global problem. Moreover, it's estimated that forced labour generates 150 billion US dollars in illegal profits every year. It's an enormous number. These are the sectors where it's felt that workers are most vulnerable: domestic work, agriculture, construction, manufacturing, entertainment. Of course, the sex trade you could add to that. Migrant workers and indigenous peoples are the most vulnerable. And then closer to home, this is a Home Office estimate, and this was estimated about 4 years ago, so it's probably up for a revisit at some point. But it's estimated that between 10 and 13,000 people are working in slavery in the United Kingdom. And you will have seen lots and lots of media reports, perhaps becoming more numerous, still making the news about people who are found to be working under duress, against their will, or in conditions that are far from suitable, shall we say. Okay, another second visualization exercise, if you will. I want you to imagine this time that you are an IT buyer. I've said here for a university, but in fact you could be an IT buyer for any public authority, all right, including local government. And in your position, you hear a media report that students are being forced to work in a factory in China making IT servers. Everybody knows what servers are? Making IT servers for a major global brand, servers that you purchase for the university. So they are the machines that you buy. Now, what would you do in an instance like this? Again, I've got some choices for you. Would you do nothing? You're working in a university, it's thousands of miles away, and your spend is too small to make any real difference. These are big global brand names. You know the sort of ones I'm on about. Secondly, might you speak to the account manager at the supplier and ask them to look into the facts for you and get back to you? Next, if the servers are purchased through a framework agreement, that's a deal that's done in collaboration to some extent perhaps by a purchasing consortium, like one of the local authority purchasing consortia perhaps. Talk to the category expert at your consortium about what action should be taken. Okay? Category expert is someone who spends their time buying IT as opposed to anything else. Or would you sign the university up to a monitoring organisation like Electronics Watch? I'm going to come back to this later on. What this is an organisation that monitors global supply chains for things like human rights abuses. Quite tricky, this one. Anybody want to hazard any guesses? Remember, this not what would you do first, but what might be a good course of action to take. Okay, I don't blame you for looking a bit puzzled, because actually, you could do any one of these. There are actually lots. The message here is there are lots of things that you can do. I would argue not nothing. Partly because in universities, and this is probably true for local government as well, in each year, for example, UK higher education buys about £800 million worth of IT supplies and services. For instance, we buy £100 million a year of desktop PCs and notebooks and tablets. We buy £100 million worth of devices just using the Apple operating system. So it's quite a big buyer. Even in not just in the public sector, but in a European context as well. So, what we do is universities can have an impact in the market, and I would suggest that what we do in local government can have an impact in the market, and what we can do collectively in public service can have a significant impact as well. I want to tell you, by the way, that if I just go back just for a second, this example where the Chinese students were working in a forced labour situation is real. They were making servers for UK universities, servers that we buy for UK universities. What these are kids of about 17 or 18, and they were working in a factory in Guangdong province, and they were studying agriculture at the local vocational school. And what was happening was that the local factory was getting behind with its orders, and it's considered to be a patriotic duty to go and do a stretch on the production line, and these kids were told that unless they did this internship, that they would not be allowed to graduate and they wouldn't get their diplomas. That's against International Labour Organization conventions. By the way, the kids were paid, but they were paid the minimum wage, but they were not given social benefits to which they're entitled under Chinese labour legislation. So that's against Chinese law. And Electronics Watch, which I'm going to come and tell you a bit more about, helped us talk to our manufacturers, our suppliers, about what could be done, and so that we could be specific about the legislation that's being breached. In their defence, the brands reacted very, very quickly and sent their auditors in straight away, and they put a stop to it. Okay? The pressure from us as buyers can have an impact, a very positive impact. It works. I'll get on with this now. Oh, by the way, in universities, we also have to remember about Generation Z. Anybody met Generation Z yet? Well, if your kids were born around about, my kids were born in 1996 and 1998. And I've got one in university and one about to hit university. These kids are arriving and they are so well connected. They grew up with social media. Ignore these kids at your peril. If they find out that in your supply chain you've got human rights abuses, that news will travel like wildfire. And what I say to universities is, don't gamble with your reputation. It will be your downfall. By the way, they don't know what a mobile phone is, because telephones were never tethered to anything in their lifetime.
It's just a phone.
That's right. By the way, you can buy ethical products as well. This is a Fairphone. we have a framework agreement for Fairphones, which are manufactured still in the Far East, but they're manufactured in factories where the workers are paid decent wages and have decent working conditions. Things like the gold for the contacts is mined, it's fair trade gold. So these kind of products are becoming very, very popular. It's well worth thinking about. Now, I just want to, again, give a bit more global context to all of this. The UN, anybody heard of the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights? Anybody heard of that? Don't be ashamed, because 2 years ago I'd never heard about it either, and I've been in public procurement for 30 years. You can probably tell by my greyness. These came out in 2011, right? And what they do is that they establish once and for all whose responsibility is it to sort out human rights abuses in business, in supply chains. Is it the responsibility of governments or states, or is it the responsibility of corporations? And the answer is, it's everybody's responsibility. And the UN Guiding Principles that came out, that were crafted by a group of people working on this project, set out exactly what responsibilities we've got, and there is an important responsibility here. This is what UNGP number 6 says. States should promote respect for human rights by business enterprises with which they conduct commercial transactions. That means public procurement. Now, the good news is, oh, by the way, that's the sleeping accommodation at the Foxconn factory that makes your iPhone. Okay, 8 or 9 to a room plus. There are 500,000 people working in the factory in Shenzhen. Just to show you now. Now, the good news, the United Kingdom was the first country to publish, and indeed has recently updated, its action plan to implement the UN Guiding Principles. We were first! Yes! So how come I never heard about it till last year? And I have quite a senior role in public procurement. I'd never heard of it. And I'm not the only one, before somebody says, well, that might be because you're rubbish, Davis. In fact, although, you know, this is a good thing too, isn't it? The Modern Slavery Act, people might have heard of that, yeah, which came out in 2015, October 2015 it came into force. And that does help. But that Modern Slavery Act, what it does is that it requires all commercial organisations, interestingly enough, universities fall into that legal category of commercial organisations. I guess it's because, you know, with student fees, tuition fees, you kind of get a degree, hopefully, in some sort of exchange for it, and that's why universities fall into that bracket. Public authorities, other than those, don't at the moment. Now, but commercial organisations that turn over more than £36 million a year are required to publish this human trafficking statement, which says what they've done to address risks of human rights abuses in their supply chain, what due diligence processes they've put into place, and how effective they are, and then to revise that statement and publish it each year by publishing it with a direct link to the homepage of their website, and it needs to be signed by a director or equivalent. Now, of course, in public service, we don't have to do that, but maybe it's a good idea. You know, our consortium, we turn over £1 million. We don't have to do it in law, but given that we're spending £200 million on behalf of our members, our board of directors felt that there was a moral imperative to do this, so we do publish a statement. And maybe other decision makers in public service could think about what they're spending on goods and services and whether there's a moral imperative on them to do it. There has been a private members bill trying to make its way through Parliament, which extends this responsibility to public authorities, but it hasn't been successful yet and probably need a few more goes before it is. But doubtless this is coming down the line and we need to be ready for this. It will come. That's my belief. So, what are some of the things that you can do in your organisations do some awareness training. Start with your senior management team. Things like showing them the signs to look out for in human trafficking or slavery, because that could be people working in your building. It could be people working in your town or city. So awareness training goes a long way. Get to know the categories of goods and services that you buy, and in particular those categories where there are risks to human rights in the supply chain. I'm going to give you a little indication in a minute of how you can find out which of your spend categories are risky. Build those due diligence processes. The things to do are something called supply chain mapping, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a minute, and monitoring. Importantly, there's no quick fix to this. You can't do a tick box exercise. You can't just get a policy from your supplier. That's not going to be good enough, because this is criminal activity, and a tick box policy is not going to give you assurance that down the supply chain there aren't risks to people working in it. This is what a supply chain mapping looks like. So if you imagine this is you, so you might buy, let's say for example you're buying laboratory consumables. I mean, you might not in local authorities, but you get my drift. In universities, research laboratories we have, so we buy consumables, things like gloves, yeah? We have first tier suppliers, so we have suppliers who supply ranges, lots and lots of petri dishes and pipettes and gloves and things like that. They in turn buy them from a supplier who might in turn buy them from a manufacturer out in Indonesia or Malaysia. In turn, the raw materials for those gloves, some of it might be natural material, might come from rubber plantations, some of it might be an artificial material that's manufactured somewhere else. You get the picture of going back in the supply chain and understanding where those supply risks are. It's important to know what it is you're buying and where it comes from. There's some help available. This is a fantastic website you can look at with an interactive tool. I'm going to give you the web address in a minute. And this is run by a charity called Anti-Slavery International that we work with. And they've done this interactive tool, and you can click on these and you can find which products are made where and which products are risky in terms of human rights abuses and which source countries are risky. All the things that you will have heard about in the press will be in there. So it's cotton from Uzbekistan, shrimp from Thailand, bricks from India. These are the sorts of product areas where you need to be careful. And this tool at this URL is a very, very useful start. Very useful start. Here are some simple things that you can do without a great deal of expense. These are really easy, straightforward things that you can do, and you could do them tomorrow. If you've got outsourced services for, say, security or cleaning, something like that, find out how those contractors recruit, especially those contractors that recruit using a third party. Because if they win a big contract and they need to get large groups of workers quickly, they might need third parties to help them do that. Now, our cleaning and security contractors tell us that they vet those third parties, but what does that mean? What checks are they carrying out? Are they, for example, asking whether groups of workers are living at the same address? That's a sign. Are they perhaps asking, do those workers have sequential bank account numbers? That's a sign. These are things that you can check. You might be able to get somebody else to do an audit for you, but actually, with the suppliers or contractors' cooperation, you can do this yourselves. It's quite easy if you're managing those contracts. It's not difficult to do this. Do those employers, perhaps the third parties, withhold debt payments? You know, we have instances where people say, okay, look, I'm coming into the United Kingdom, I need to pay for travel. Oh, traffickers will say, don't worry, we'll pay for your travel. You come, we'll get you a job in the United Kingdom, we'll pay you, and we'll keep a bit back to pay for your travel. I haven't got anywhere to live. Don't worry, say the traffickers. We'll pay for your accommodation. We'll find your accommodation. We'll pay you. We'll keep a bit back to pay for your accommodation. This is called debt bondage. And supplies, the debt never goes away. So they are bonded to their employer. Watch out for those. Other things you can do, nearly finished. Run joint projects with your suppliers in high-risk spend high-risk spend categories. Map supply chains, identify risks, as I say. There's a bit more detail than that, but I'll tell you where you can find out about that detail. You don't have to do this on your own. You know, if you're working for a district council, that's going to be hard for you to do that on your own. You can collaborate with others. You can work together on this. A lot of councils buy the same things, buy the same services, work together, share good practice, do monitoring together, do supply chain mapping together. It works. Or you can buy through a purchasing consortium if that purchasing consortium is switched on enough to be doing something about this. Lastly, I want to tell you about Electronics Watch, and then I'm going to show you this short video. So this is an organisation which works for public authorities across Europe, councils, universities, health authorities, etc. And they all contribute to a fund, and that fund keeps an eye on the global electronics supply chain, as the video I'm about to show you proves.
The electronics industry is one of the fastest growing global industries. Public institutions in the EU buy €94 billion worth of electronics every year for use at hospitals, schools, and public offices. The global electronics industry faces serious challenges when it comes to providing a safe and healthy work environment for its labourers. Electronics Watch is an independent monitoring organisation working to achieve respect for labour rights in the global electronics industry.
There are serious human rights violations that are going on in the industry, and many of them in public sector supply chains. The public sector could be an immensely positive influence on this problem. One statistic said that 1 in 5 computers across Europe are bought by the public sector.
I don't think the public sector, generally speaking, is taking this issue serious enough. If it did, it would not make its purchase decisions with scant regard to conditions for workers in these affected countries.
The electronic industry is global. It engages people from all over the world, from the mineral mines in Ghana and Congo to the electronics manufacturing in South Korea, Vietnam, and China. Many of the semiconductors for the large computer brands are produced in South Korea. A factory worker here faces 500 to 1,000 different chemicals daily.
이름은 김미연이고요. 나이는 만으로 35살 됐고요. 반도체에서 근무한 지는 15년 2개월 근무를 했어요. 근무할 때 뭐 두통이나 생리통, 그리고 뭐 불임 이런 것 때문에 힘들었다가 자연 임신이 됐는데, 그것도 포상기태 임신이 돼가지고 제가 유산 수술을 하고, 그리고 그게 호르몬 이상이 생겨서 용모성 종양까지 이게 발달이 돼서 제가 항암 치료까지 다 받았었거든요. 반도체 근무해서 얻은 질병이 그 근무 환경이랑 연관이 있을 수도 있다고 의사 선생님이 그렇게 말씀해 주셨거든요.
The factories in manufacturing countries like China and Vietnam are running day and night. At the assembly lines, workers are standing 12 hours, 6 or even 7 days a week.
Việt Nam có là một thị trường lao động dồi dào, có nhân công rẻ và các cái nhà đầu tư như Samsung, Nokia nên tìm kiếm những cái thị trường như vậy. Những cái vấn đề của thách thức và vấn đề của người lao động của Việt Nam gặp phải đấy là hiện nay luật an toàn lao động của Việt Nam thì chưa cập nhật và chưa đủ đảm bảo cái an toàn bảo vệ cho người lao động. Trong khi đó thì nhà nước thì luôn có cái chính sách trải thảm đỏ với các nhà đầu tư mà thiếu cái sự quan tâm đúng mực đối với những cái tác động về mặt xã hội và cái sự hiểu biết đối với tăng cường cái hiểu biết đối với quyền lợi của người lao động.
Thời gian của em làm việc là 12 tiếng ạ. Thu nhập bình quân của em thì là 6 triệu một tháng, tính trung bình ra. Đó là tính cả làm thêm. Còn nếu như mà chỉ không làm thêm giờ thì là chỉ khoảng tầm 4 triệu ạ. Và nó cũng chỉ đủ để chi trả cho việc ăn ở và đi lại với bình thường.
Because we're spending taxpayers' money on goods and services that will feed public services, it's absolutely essential that those public services can be delivered without causing harm to others. The challenge is on us to make sure that we keep up the pressure and ensure that workers' conditions right across the world are always in the watchful gaze of buyers like us.
To date, public sector organisations who want to improve conditions within their supply chains haven't had an effective mechanism by which to do so. Electronics Watch is providing that mechanism. It enables the public sector to speak with one voice to the market by using common tools and common contracts, and it monitors factories so the public sector can find out what's actually going on, so that then they can put pressure upon their suppliers to improve conditions.
Okay, thanks for watching that. Just to add, if you want to find out more about supply chain mapping, monitoring, what some of the pros and cons are for things like factory audits, that kind of thing, together with our colleagues at the University of Greenwich and the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, this is going to be available for free download 24th of May. That's next Wednesday. Any questions? Thanks for listening.